Okay, people, I'm back again. What do I have this week? This week, well, I have Tinker, Tailor, Soldier Spy by John LeCarré. Is that how you say it? Has a little accent. It's French. Now, I have this copy and this copy. This is actually like three of the books in one, right? But because this one's like from 1975, yeah, I decided not to actually read that one. So I was reading this one, but look at that. It's very uncinematic, right? Well made though, hefty, but it's only right like it's only like that much. It's not the whole thing, so don't. I'm not trying to trick anybody. I didn't read this whole thing, but I read this. Now, I don't. It just happened that I have two copies of it because obviously, if you're gonna get three books in one for like $1, you take that mess. But I've never read it. I don't know anything about it. I'm not like a super fan of it. I'd heard about it because they made a movie about it, right? It gets a lot of books in your mind sometimes, or sometimes authors, and I'll go check out what they do. So I had heard of it, so I picked it up. This, well, okay. First off, obviously spoilers. Second, I think I'm gonna give my rating early so that you can decide if you want to hear the spoilers or not. To me, this is a 3 out of 5. Strong 3 out of 5. It it's not good if you're big into other genres, right? If you know your genre and you're feeling it, there's no need to skip over to this. And especially because of the way it goes. We have, I would say, you know how they have hard sci-fi? It's very big into the science. This would be like hard espionage, if that makes sense. It's very realistic. There's no James Bond happening here. We're not things aren't blowing up, this kind of thing. It's very realistic. It almost feels like a biography, realistic. That. And when I mean realistic, I have this book, The Service, Memoirs of General Reinhard Galen. This fool was an actual spy. This fool was a Nazi spy, actually, talked to Hitler, who then went on to start Germany's spy agency. And again, they read a lot the same on how they react, how they think through things. So it's very, very realistic. It's also slow to start. It's not going to come at you quick. There's not some massive thing like there's this nuclear bomb in London. We're not going to do any of this kind of mess. We're not doing that. It's very self-contained, which is hard to do in a lot of cases. Okay, so let's get into it before I give too much away. Another thing, side note, I did my notes different this week. Instead of what I would do is read the whole book and then go back through it and sort of take notes. Instead, this time I was taking notes as I was reading. So let's see if that works better or worse or what we think about it. I have no idea. All right, we have something that shows early in the book and carries throughout, which is part of the genius of it. And part of why I almost wanted to rate it higher for this sort of little writing technique, right? Something really that you can chew on here. But the rest of it didn't allow it. Excuse me. He flows. in and out of narrator so that one person will be talking, and in that it goes like he's saying this thing, and then out of that he jumps into their inner monologue, right? And sometimes it's a heavy break. Smiley thought this, right? And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the little quotations that say, that this person's speaking just stop, and we carry on almost like it's them speaking. There are subtle differences though, right? So you can tell that it's not that person talking, even if you didn't see the quotations. You notice sort of different syntax, but it's very subtle, and it starts to break you down as a reader in the same way that you need to be for the book, because you start to not know what's real. You start to be suspicious like our spies in the book. This sort of thing. And add to that each character, which is not all books do this, but each character has little variations in there, like I said, syntax, that make them feel like them. Some don't do this as good as others in books I've read. But here he does it very good and very subtly. Some people will talk, you'll read them in your mind, they talk faster. Some people are slower. Some have more slang. Some will add like tricks because they're spies, where everything's a joke, or I over insult, I throw a lot at you, right? I saw you down at the lake. What were you doing? Cheating on your wife again? And he just keeps throwing things at your face to get reactions out of you, to sort of dig down to that truth. It's very, very subtle, very good writing. Very, very good writing. It almost feels like a merge between first person narration and not. And I can't remember another book that does this. It's very, very good. Again, I almost gave it a 4 for the writing alone, but I didn't think I could do that. But if you are into spy stuff, this will be great. Or if you're interested, right? You can't do too bad with this book. It's very, very smartly written. Okay, so we get into our story. We start with sort of like a mysterious person at a school, at like a prep school or something. And then we cut to a different whole situation completely. And we don't really go back to that for a hot second. And that's another thing he does. Because it's very realistic. You would think you need to know about the Nazis in the 50s. I mean, not the Nazis. The Ruskies. The Ruskies in the 50s. All the spying that was going on in West Germany and blah, blah, blah. And if you know all those things, it's not going to hurt. But if you don't know any of it, it does not bog down the story whatsoever. Because it's so self-contained, because you get so much of their feeling and inner monologue, you don't need to know where such and such place is on the map. Because it doesn't matter. What matters is how our characters are feeling and the perceptions they're picking up in who and what's around them. Right? It really doesn't matter. And it fits the characters. Because they're spies and been traveling all over the world anyway, they've long gotten past being interested in Paris, being interested in Istanbul. It's all a game for these people, constantly. They don't care. They don't really care where they're at. Argentina, Middle East, Russia. It's all the same. You could get got as easily there as anywhere else. So you don't need to know any of this. There is some to do about Britishness, right? Like they say, I need to go to Whitehall. I need to talk to the Admiralty. Well, if you didn't know that those are government positions or government buildings, then you might be a little confused because it sounds the same as I need to talk to Control. We're back in Circus, right? But again, it won't kill the book. It won't kill the book. But you will, if you read this, you will remember bits of it when you're grabbing something from history later on down the line. It'll pop up in your head and you're like, oh man, I remember sort of that from that book. And your memory won't clash with facts you're learning, right? Facts about Whitehall, about the Admiralty, so on and so forth. It's a very good book. We're introduced to Smiley. That's the name of our guy. He's sort of like a fat, non-impressive person. I'm not going to use a picture of a fat guy. I'm using the guy from the movie because that's going to make my life easier. Also, I kind of like how the movie visualized it. I haven't seen the movie, but when I was, I've seen clips of it, and I know they're going to come up when I grab pictures for this video later today. We meet Smiley. He's having issues with his wife and sort of existential issues about his life. And they come and they get him. They're like, we need you, Smiley. And he's swept back up into the spy game. He's talking to a guy named Ricky Tarr. Ricky Tarr's kind of like a psychopath. He's actually kind of crazy. I think they send him to do spy work, but also maybe to kill people. And they kind of know he's crazy, but it's a spy game and you need people who kill people. So he comes with this sort of crazy story. And again, it's fed to you, not like here are the facts. But Smiley, he knows that the work's going, so he starts chewing through what he needs. And the story is something about a mole deep in Circus, which is British spy agency. Not like just a dirty spy, but like deep, deep in there. And obviously that's a problem, and obviously we're going to get on it. We casually talk about, now I say casually, very casually talk about spycraft, almost in passing. Um, Body talk, what is that? The signals, they say the signal would be body talk, meaning if my collar's open, it's safe. If it's closed, it's not safe. If my purse is on this arm versus that arm, these kind of signals that you can just use your body to tell. We cover, and it's all just very quickly, where some people are like janitors, some people are just receptionists. They call them the moms for some reason, a bunch of ladies. Forget bagmen, field agents, this kind of thing. And then the thinking people are way up in Circus, right? So that, like, a field agent would know, it's like, I don't know what's going on. You just tell me what to do and I do it. I don't overthink it. Whereas the higher ups are always thinking of everything. This compartmentalized thing. But he does it just in passing, which I kind of like, because that's how our character would take it. He's not going to, I don't re-sit and think about things I know a lot about anyway. I focus. And that's what he does. He focuses on finding a spy, which, again, throughout the book you start to see is a lot harder than you'd think. How do you find a spy among spies if he's good enough to hide from all the other spies? What was it? Turning a mistress, money laundering, tricking foreign ambassadors, assassinating people. He just, again, casually goes by all of this. Oh, another fun part. Humanizing, which is what this book needs. We have a description, a fairly long description of a guy, because Smiley's on the out, but he needs files from inside. Now, they don't say this. This guy starts the chapter and he's a little worried. And you're natural, like, what are you worried about? And then you're swept with you're swept along the narration, as they say. He needs to go in, swap a file, and then get that file out of the building. Right? Again, in the room full of nothing but spies everywhere. Checks and double checks and this sort of thing. And he's on the outside casual. Like, hey, how's it going, Bob? But he'll go, how's it going, Bob? And then in his head, he'll panic. Like, oh my God, I don't normally hit Bob on the shoulder. He's going to flip the crap out. Why am I hitting him on the shoulder? And then the other half of his brain will be like, calm the crap down, bro. You've done this before. And then the other half's like, it's been a while. I'm rusty. I'm rusty. I'm going to get caught. This is not good. Right? So, and we'll intercut that stress with the action of just walking over there. The action of just sitting calmly. Try to act natural. Right? That's as much spyness as anything else. How do you act natural? How do you sit normal? How do you not draw attention or stick out in anyone's mind? While you're feeling the sweat pour down your back and you're sure everyone can see it. You know, this kind of thing. It's very, very... He keeps daydreaming about a girlfriend just to distract his mind so that he can be casual enough to do what he needs to do. It's very cool. It's very, very cool. And it does it more than once in a few spots. Again, you would think this is tricky to write, you would think. Because all Smiley is doing is he'll get a file and start reading it, and he'll think back to stuff he remembers. And what he's trying to do is like rewatch the movie of all those years and all these people, and watch it with the eye of, the costume instead of just watching the movie or the cinematography. Instead, he's rechecking his memory with an eye to who's weird. What weirdness did I maybe overlook that I now need to focus on to piece apart and find this mole? Some of these people are his friends, some people he knows for years. Right? He needs to slowly piece it apart. But how do you tell a story about a guy sitting down thinking? Well, what he does is almost, again, that first person, that narration that we were using earlier in regular time, he's adding to memory. So it makes the memories feel current, like they're happening now. Right? And he'll do that, and some of it vacillates between his memory now in the moment and how he thinks, and then back to a file and the memory that file's remembering or drawing up. And then dialogue about the memory and what's missing, or what should have been added, or why would you not write that in? This kind of thing. On and on we go. It's very, very clever. Very smart writing. It was fun. He would do the same because he would go talk to people who were also retired about their, give me your memories about what happened. And it's like a trained interrogator. He when they get off, they're like, oh, they're losing it. He pulls the reins a little. He'll balance them, and then we'll describe him laughing with them or sharing a drink. But all those things are the fake. The work's in his mind. The work's driving this conversation where it needs to be. Very, very cool. We have a few things here. They have something called audio tunnels they were trying to set up, and that just got me thinking because, well, it's the 50s, but even now, this wasn't part of the book, right? He just mentioned it, and I was thinking, I'm like, I wonder what they do have set up now, right? Like, if you had TikTok, how much is the Chinese like actually just listening to every conversation on your phone, right? Like your phone's just laying on the table. Are they just like, they're just downloading it all, right? and sorting it out later, right? How wild is that mess? And you would think, well, what's the use in that? But there's a lot of uses that go into this. Into Because they start so early, right? Like they'll get you when you're like 15 or something, and then separate you and start you on a different track. But you remember your friends from when you were 14. But who else will remember it? Nobody. Nobody except in that little town. But if you recorded it, find it. Find it. Make connections. Hold on. We also have a guy, because he keeps going back in his memory, talking about his former boss, who they call Control. And one of them said, he's the only one we never figured his name out. I think that's what it says. That's how mysterious, even other spies can figure out who he really was. Right? But that him and Smiley were boys. He, towards the end, either it looked like he was going crazy. He was also sick with some kind of cancer. And there was power placed for his spot. Right? So all of this was happening at once. He keeps remembering. And again, some part of him's sad to remember his friend dying. And the other part has to be clinical. Because he now thinks his old friend was onto the mole. Keep cutting through all of that. Information regarding, what do we have? We have peddlers who would be planted by any number of people, opposition, allies, who would try and sell you fake information. We have what they call chicken feed, which is stuff that they leak on purpose, which doesn't mean anything anymore because it's useless, right? But I like that idea of how cautious you have to be in an intelligence agency for people just lying to you, tricking you. Even, I'm like, that's my ally. Yeah, but he has his own game. And he has his own business to deal with. And if he needs to bury you a little bit, it's the name of the game. You should be better at your job. Because they're not mad about it at all. They're not mad that somebody is a mole. They're not mad that other people have missed it. They at one point they go, we all knew kind of this would happen at some point. We've done it to them. So naturally it's going to happen to us. We need to now limit the damage and obviously get the mole out. But they're very matter of fact about it, and it's very cool. But you know that dirty crap happens all the time. I'm going to send you this fake information, see if you bite. See who bites. See who I can get to send me real information. On and on we go. Oh, at some point, and a couple of characters do this, which I thought's very cool too. He's talking to a lady named Connie, I think. He's talking to a lady named Connie. And what she's like a little maybe autistic. She's a little maybe crazy, something like this, right? Something in her head's not, she's not a normal person. But they don't want normal people. Normal people don't get things. So what they could do, what she could do, was just read files, read information, see pictures, and expand out of that something new, something, it's like kind of maybe like a doctor where he sees all the facts and in his mind he's picturing, oh, this person overdrinks, or this person maybe was in a jungle, or what would fit what I'm seeing, right? He's sort of imagining things. There's this leap that happens that's not information given to him. A leap can happen. That's what she does. She can make these intuitive leaps. And the way she does it is she like make believes these people are in her life, that they're real in some way. They are real people too, but they don't know her. She's never met them. But she talks to them and she'll make up different stories. This one's a bad baker. This one's my boyfriend. This kind of thing. We've been in a long relationship. She never met him. But adding that attribute, adding that human attribute to this raw information helps spatialize all this, right? And it starts to be a predictor. She was really good at it. Well, Smiley in another spot does the same thing. He starts treating the information like a person and then brainstorms what that person would do, right? Like fitting on different clothes. Well, he'd do this, and then maybe he'd go there, but then he'd do this. But why would he leave the fireplace on? The cold. He doesn't like this. He's into that, right? You start to visualize who this person is, right? And you're making stuff up in your head, but you have a real problem without all the facts. And so if you make up sort of this mirage, and you make like 5 of them, and then one person randomly fits that mirage, you have a track now to follow. Here's a clue I didn't have. Here's something that sort of fits that I can dig into more and get me closer, one way or the other. If it turns out they're not, your digging excluded them. If it turns out they are, then you've caught the spy. Very subtle, very, very cool though, right? And I'm imagining, like if you tried this in real life, what could you figure out about people around you, right? I don't know. Mm, yeah, I wrote this because we'll have conversations, maybe between one person, maybe it's a boardroom meeting, but what is it? Everyone's so suspicious, everyone's so perceptive, everyone's so cautious. And it makes for tense conversations. Really, they're like, your boss says one thing to you, and the guy's like, well, why do you ask about my crayons? And he'll give this sort of glib answer. And he's watching the room, and this person won't move at all. That person fidgets, but they always fidget. Why are they moving their ear, though? Why are they rubbing? I've never seen that. But he does have a new suit on. Maybe it's just a new suit thing. Why didn't I pay attention to suits before? In comes more dialogue, right? So you then start to try and chew on what they're saying the same. And you worry the way he is that everyone else is chewing through everything you're doing. And maybe they notice the sweat on your forehead or on your back. Or did you fidget? How do you normally sit? Man, I don't want to sit different. But how can I normally sit casually? Should I be nervous right now? Should I be this? You know what I mean? And we have all this cross information just cutting through. And then our author also didn't say this part's making him nervous. That we're describing it, the nervousness, the tenseness. It makes for very, very fun reading. You really get into the spy game with these people. What is it? Them, like I said, the styles of talking, where one person will joke, one's brash. It reminded me of Dune, when you have to walk across the desert, kind of a funny way to not make the worm come and eat you. They're all doing it though, just as a matter of routine, and they're in a room full of friends. This is all the British, all in-house. They're that suspicious. They're that on guard all the time. Um, okay, I already covered that sort of. It says one. It says at one part, Smiley is a man who expects very little of communication. I'm like, he's just straight not believing your words a lot of the times. He's looking for how you say it. He's looking at if you backtrack on words. You were going to say something, then you didn't. You fidgeted. This kind of thing. Uh, All right. That's the hunt. It takes a good chunk of the book. And as we go, it's again that existential crisis for this man. He's not just on the hunt. He's rethinking maybe he's too old for it. At one point, he's trying to reactivate the spyness that he was trying to get rid of because he was retired, right? Like, notice everything suspicious. Be casual. keep track of information, of names, of people, this and that. He's trying to wake his memory up. So he's dealing with old friends, and he's dealing with inner emotions, and he keeps talking about his wife, and on we go. So it's just this wave after wave of stuff coming at you, even though nothing is happening. Really, he's just reading files, talking to old ladies in their house. Sometimes he went to lunch once or twice. That you made those sort of narrow things that interesting. I love. I really do love it. But again, like I said, I can see how if you want some meat on the bone, so to speak, if you want some pace, you want some action, you might not be able to like this one. This is for my espionage friends. Also, if you like biographies, that'd be good for you. Well, all this information boils down into control, boil it down sort of too, where we think it's down to one of five people. So what I was going to add at the beginning. Sorry, I messed this up. I was trying to think early on in reading the book. Nothing was happening. Nothing was happening. We're reading files. We're just trying to get our feet. I was like, why am I not bored? Normally this would make me sort of boring, but I think it's the title. Our author uses even the title. Because if you look at it, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. You add that last word in, I'm taking everything now completely different than I would have before. If you'd have named it like The Shining House, or The Circus, or The Agent, something like this, something less espionage, I might have got bored a lot sooner and left. Right? Or maybe the writing would have held me a little bit better. But I would have got bored. But I never was bored once in this whole thing because spies bring a certain amount of unknown ground with them. At any point, someone could get shot, someone could get stabbed, the whole crap could go hit the fan, right? So the moment he puts spy in the title, I'm reading those first first two chapters, and I'm really trying to like eyeball what's happening because spy. And it carries me to when things quicken up. It's very smart. If you're a writer out there, everything's your responsibility and everything can be used. Anyway, back to the story. After a lot of digging, we get down to the five people. And that's where we get our title. One's Tinker, one's Tailor, one's Soldier. And then they have one called Poor Man. I mean, that's not going to work as a title. So I think it's the same as the book, right? We go from memory to current. Smiley's clearly our spy. And he has to deal with one of these as a mole, right? Or you see it the other way, where Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, not Bagman, actually spy. Right? You see it two different ways. I think I like it the other way, where it turns into current. And they're all friends. One's Alaline, who's running the thing now. One's Hayden, his friend, who's also cheating on his wife. One is named Bland, who's the right man of Alaline. Alaline, yeah. And then one's Toby Esterhaus, who does a lot of movements here and there. And then they're trying to work on how to figure it out. How do we sort it down to one person? Even says it in the book. The capture is a bit anticlimactic, right? Because he'll know who it is before he has who it is. But having it's not the victory. The victory is in his mind when he figures it out. And then the rest is just the chips are going to fall like you already know they're going to fall. He baits grabs Toby and starts giving him the what for. It turns out Toby didn't know what was going on, and he obviously wants to help fix the problem. And then they set up like a Russian intermediary and his friend, which turns out the spy turns out to be old Bill Hayden, who was his friend, and he had a problem. Like, he hears the voice, and the spy Hayden is so good at making people like him. Right? He's British, and he's likable, and you've known him for years. That part of Smiley revolts against it, where one part of him doesn't want to even capture him in that moment. And that's another, I'm like, the strain on these people to keep doing what they do is pretty interesting. But he does get them. And then in being caught, Hayden like shrinks, right? Like you were the big man when you were playing everyone. But now you're exposed and you're shrinking now. He starts coughing. He looks frail. He's growing a beard. This kind of thing. It's this dramatic change, which you could see sometimes in real life when good or bad, right? Some person gets a new relationship and they seem brighter, younger, thinner. Someone loses a person and they seem thin, haggard. These changes happen physically in people, and our author doesn't miss the chance to add that into his story. Again, very realistic. Um, and then our guy from the beginning turns out to be a guy who was shot and we thought was dead, but now he's alive. Jim Prideaux. I think it's French. Prideaux. I don't know how to say it. It was a whole big to-do. And he ends up killing this guy. He ends up killing Hayden because Hayden's a dirty mole that got his friends killed. And he sinks back into his life at the school, forcing himself to re-forget, right? And that's how the book ends. Again, that's not every little bit. Just the broad strokes. It's a very, very fun book, though. I'm going to read the other ones. I'm no doubt about it. Because the way it goes in here, where is it? The way it goes in here, it ends almost like a chapter. Right? Oh, come on. It ends like a chapter. Bugger. Wrong page. So it ends, and the next one just sort of starts. And in reading this one, there's book 1 and book 2. So this feels like just a continuation. At least I assume it will. I'm going to keep reading it. For certainly. It was very fun. It's a fun world to be in. As much as it would be to hang out with elves or dwarves. To hang out, you're actually hanging out with real spies. Right? And you're like, people do get shot. Things, go ham. But when you hang out with them in the room, they don't concern themselves with the hamness of it all, right? They're busy doing their work. And it's fun to hang out there. You don't get many chances. I don't hang out at the CIA often. I don't know about y'all. Maybe y'all do. But I don't. So I'm going to keep reading these. Ad time? I don't know how long this video is since I had to stop it halfway through. I think it's long enough. Okay, ads here. This went well. I scheduled this out perfectly. I got it done. I have now time. I have other fat books. I don't know if you've seen Cervantes. Let me show you. I'll show you in the ad break. Look how fat this stupid thing is. I'm reading it in between other books, right? So when I get to it, it's not going to be, I didn't read this bad boy in 1 week. Calm down with that. Right? But also my Lyndon Johnson I got to read. I'm getting the hang of reading these books in a week, which is good, I think. Certainly fun. Buy my books if you haven't. Then I'll get money. Gotta ask for the sale, right? That's what they say. Ask for the sale. Buy my books. Or, buy Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It's a good one, too. Or Lord of the Rings. You know what? If you don't have Lord of the Rings, you buy that first. Then buy my books. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a sucker for Lord of the Rings. I also have sitting here Shakespeare. And I'm like, does that count as a book? I don't know. All right, people. It's long enough. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll be back next week.